afternoon and welcome back to Mimi's Kitchen. Getting ready to make some homemade pickles, and I thought I'd bring you all along. One of my favorite Andy Griffith shows from the Mayberry days was Kerosene Cucumbers, where Aunt Bee would make all these pickles and thought they were delicious, and they actually tasted like kerosene. Oh, I hope that's not me, but anyway, I'm going to try my hand at making some bread and butter pickles. And I got my recipe from the Blue Book Guide to Preserving, which you can pick these up at Walmart in the canning section, and they are perfect for canning and dehydrating and freezing foods. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. It's full of really good, easy recipes. So the recipe I chose for this project was on page 78 in the book, and it's bread and butter pickles. I have a large amount of cucumbers coming in from the garden, and I need to do more pickles with them because we just can't eat them quick enough. And this recipe is one of my favorites. I love bread and butter pickles, and so it's so easy to follow. And there it is, the bread and butter pickle recipe. So I needed about 4 pounds of cucumbers and 2 pounds of onions. These were just freshly picked and washed from my garden. And they're really nice pickling cucumbers, which are perfect for making pickles. So I'm going to cut off both the ends, and they've been thoroughly washed and all the little pricklies removed. And then I did a little less than a half an inch, almost like a quarter of an inch cut. See that size? That's perfect for pickles. You don't want it too thin or too thick. So I've gone through and I'm going to cut up the 2 onions and slice those, not chop but slice. And then I'm going to fill up my crock pot crock, because you need a non-metal dish for your pickles to soak in. So I've got them all cut up and in the crock, and I'm adding the onions. And you just mix all that together, the onions and the cucumbers. Then I'm going to take some ball pickling salt and coat these good. It's about 1/3 cup of salt, and you must use pickling salt when you're making pickles. Regular table salt will not work. It has to be the pickling salt. So I just coated that very well, and then I'll take my plastic spoon and just stir it up, making sure all the salt gets down into the pickles. So far, so good. This one recipe will make about 7 pints of pickles. Now let these sit for, the recipe calls for them to sit for 1.5 hours, but I actually left to go visit my parents right after this, so it was about 3 hours later, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. Then I just covered it with a towel and I let it sit. So when I returned, you can see that the salt draws out the moisture in the cucumbers, and that's what makes them crisp. So you need to really rinse that salt off. And then over here I have my seasoning mixture getting ready to boil, and of course I have my jar sterilizing, and then a pot of hot water for the lids. Now you follow the recipe exactly on the amount of sugar, the amount of vinegar, and the spices, and you bring that to the stove, dissolving the sugar, stirring it well, and then you bring it to a boil. Now while that's dissolving, I'm rinsing all the salt off of those cucumbers. This is a very big step that you need to make sure you do. If you don't, your pickles will taste very salty. So I'm just going to run some cool water all over these cucumbers. There was a lot of salt water down in the bottom because it draws the moisture out of the cucumbers and the onions. So under some cold water, I just kept running it, and I dig my hands through it, and I just make sure everything is good and rinsed. Then I give it a taste to make sure it doesn't still taste very salty. This is a perfect recipe. I love to make bread and butter pickles, and then I'll chop them up and put them in tuna salad. It's one of my favorite ways to make tuna salad. I'm the only anyone in the family that likes them. Everybody else likes dill pickles, so I might try that next. I'm kind of leery of it. I don't want kerosene cucumbers, but I might try dill next. So on the stove, I have my sugar, vinegar, and all my spices getting hot, and then you're just going to add in your cucumbers, and you bring that to a boil. Aren't they pretty and green? So I'm just tossing all that in there, and you just bring it to a boil, and then you stop. Now the chow chow recipe and my sweet relish recipe, it had you cooking it for 10 minutes, but this recipe says to stop once you bring it to a boil. So I'm just stirring very well and making sure everything gets coated with the brine, and then the pickle and juices and the vinegar, make sure everything's coated, and then I wait for it to come to a boil. Okay, once it has come to a boil, I removed it from the stove, and I already had my little canning station set up with my towel and my funnel and all the tools that you need for canning. I had that set up over on another counter, and then you start ladling the hot pickle juice mixture into hot jars. So my jars are nice and sterilized, and my lids are sitting over there in very hot water, and that is how you can. Now these will be water bath can, which means I do not need a pressure canner, but I do need to run these through a water bath canner so that they will seal. I'm just getting out all the air bubbles, and I'm going to take a paper towel, and you really need to wipe that rim. Those little celery seeds and mustard seeds can get up under that glass and cause you not to have a good seal. So I just put the lid on, and then the ring. Sometimes you have to really play with those rings. They don't want to screw on right. Make sure they're not rusty. Make sure that your lids are in good condition and they're new. And then I put that in the canner. So these were processed for 10 minutes, which means a roaring, boiling pot for 10 minutes. And here is the finished product, beautiful bread and butter pickles. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and leave me a comment below if you like to make pickles. Have a very blessed day.